Hello and welcome to Wit, Wisdom, and What Matters Most podcast with your hosts, Danton Troyer and Kyle Luetters. I'm your podcast producer, RJ Malyk. Danton and Kyle, so good to see you, and it's great to meet you. So let's get right to it. What are we going to be talking about on your podcast? Start explaining.
Yeah, I think with our podcast, we are talking to the executives of the world, generally speaking, and really just trying to talk about some of the topics we have conversations with our clients every day, and they get missed. You can't put these in white papers. These are conversations that are had with an individual. But I think a lot of the stories, a lot of the lessons, we relate through our meetings, but I really think that more people would enjoy hearing some of these stories that come out of our conversations with just different levels of executives across the country.
All
I
right.
think to what Danton said, their stories are always far more fascinating than any chart, disclosure, anything else that we put in front of people. You can watch eyes glaze over like the roads during the winter. I mean, it is still the cold part of the year. But really, if you think about it, in today's day and age, there is a huge demand for people to not feel alone. They want to feel like they're a part of a tribe. They want to feel like there are other people, which is amazing to me to think about this. As interconnected as what we are, we still feel so disconnected. And the hope here is to share stories with folks that are having similar experiences or that will go through similar experiences to build this little collective, to build this little tribe so that you can continue on about your journey and know that you're not necessarily alone in what you're feeling or you're facing or even what you're celebrating. There are other people out there that are doing very similar, if not the same types of things that you are.
Okay. How did you guys get together to do this podcast? Give us a little background on how the idea came about and the process that you went through to get to where you are now.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it started with coffee in the morning at Starbucks. Kyle and I met. I think I signed up to be a CFP mentor, and Kyle was on his way to becoming a CFP, and we've been doing that for quite some time. And uh, it came about that we needed another advisor here. And, I really was asking Kyle if he knew anybody because I thought, Kyle was very happy where he was. And I still think he was very happy where he was. But we ended up making things work. And, one of the things reasons he wanted to kind of, at least I think, join forces was, he wanted to do more marketing and more stuff like this to get out there and just didn't feel like he had that avenue. And so when he came to me about a podcast, I was not comfortable. It was certainly not my cup of tea, but now, I've been enjoying it. And, it's good to get back to getting out and just telling these stories because we do have a lot of experience in talking with folks like this. And like Kyle said, I mean, these stories really matter.
They really do, and that has been one of the most consequential coffees, I would say, in my story. If we're talking about this concept of stories and shared experiences, you think life's going to go down one path, it goes down another. So right there with my story, you can start to relate to a lot of other folks that kind of come to this fork in the road, if you will. You think you're going to go down one path, you think life's going to look this way, you think the white picket fence is going to be arranged in this fashion, and then something just kind of comes out of left field almost that changes the whole ball game, no pun intended. and it creates something that at the time was scary, but oftentimes when you get beyond your comfort zone and you kind of change some things up, something good falls apart so that something great can come together in its place. And frankly, that's why we want to share these stories on this podcast is getting to those folks and talking to those executives where, there are tons of books and pieces and videos produced about the path not taken. So let's explore, let's pull on the thread of those paths, both taken and not taken, and continue to get them out. We're still evolving. We're still learning how this works together. I think it works very well. I used to do radio and broadcasting back in the day. Funny story about financial planners. Some of them have a very sturdy finance background. Others of us don't. We know how to work a calculator and ask Google, now AI, how we figure out some things. But one thing that is timeless across this entire industry is the ability to relate to people. And again, I think both Danton and I, part of the reason that the partnership works is that we find ways to relate not only to one another as we do these podcasts and you figure out a rhythm and how you're going to interview people together, but also too with clients and folks that are going through things where they're just really kind of looking for like a guide. And that's honestly where we find our sweet spot, honestly.
Yeah. Kyle, you just mentioned how, you um, touched on something, how the partnership works, and you gave your perspective. So, um, Danton, how about your perspective on how this partnership is working with Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I think he hit the nail on the head. I mean, I don't think we knew what we were quote unquote getting into at the start of it, but I mean, I came over to Minetta 7, 8 years ago as well, and it was kind of a similar story. I was not intending to come here at all. Um, I'm obviously grateful that I did, but that story and the last 10 years, I couldn't have scripted out the way it is. I mean, one of our other partners here makes fun of me some days because I mean, in about 18 months, I had changed jobs, adopted a kid, moved homes, joined a country club. And it was just like, and it wasn't that I planned that out. It's just I had to make some decisions and I had to do some
Sure.
things, and that's the way it presented itself. And I'm very grateful for the path that led me on, but it did take some a leap of faith to do those things.
Kyle, you mentioned your background, and Danton, you were just talking about your background.
Yeah.
Does that lend to a different perspective? Kyle, I'll go to you first. Does your radio background lend to a different perspective of what you guys are trying to accomplish now?
I think so, because like I mentioned, in this industry, eh, there are so many different backgrounds. Like you go to some firms, they actually specifically seek out non-finance people. They're looking for a specific subset. I am so grateful that I went and I did radio and I did broadcasting, because so much of what we do, tying this back, is relating to people, finding a way to take some information that's out there in the ether and present it in a different way, and present it in a way that it lands with your audience. Okay. If, you know, I used to do racing broadcasts, TV, radio, everything like this and that. Obviously, you would call a chess match different than you would call a race.
Sure.
The audiences are
Sure.
different.
Yeah.
Okay. And you guys laugh, but I've actually commentated a chess match before.
That would be interesting.
Trust me, you have to be very quiet. But that's part of the unique thing about what we do is, yeah, I mean, the tax code always changes. Investments always change. Workplace benefits, all this stuff changes. There's no possible way you can keep all of that in your head.
Yeah.
What doesn't change, though, is the ability to relate and tell stories, and specifically for a lot of folks, come up with analogies that help them understand more about their own plan that they may or may not understand. To me, that's the whole ball of wax, and that's why we're really doing the podcast too, is to share some more of those stories. Because, like, if for confidential purposes, you can't share what goes on in a client meeting.
Yes.
That
yes.
is very good, but also you miss a lot of the gold in those stories that come out of those meetings. And so with the podcast, with anonymity, we can share some of those stories. We can weave those into some of the interviews that we'll do. It's just a really powerful thing.
Kyle's talking about, excitement of a chess match. I have to share that once I was at a tree sitting contest.
Oh my.
So people were sitting in a tree, and the person who lasted the longest and didn't fall out of the tree was the winner.
Please tell me it was a guy that was like a deer hunter or something.
No, this was a town event.
Oh.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was saying, who fell out of the tree? Because that seems like an even bigger problem.
And the thing is, they were sitting up pretty high, and I was just shaking my head. So anyway, I'm diverging from the topic here. Danton, let's go to you about your perspectives. I mean, we just listened to Kyle. I mean, how does your perspective differ from Kyle's?
Yeah, I think that's what he was talking about. And even when we're hiring on our team, we're always looking for different perspectives. I mean, we have CPAs. I mean, Kyle's an enrolled agent. We have CFPs. We have people from all different backgrounds, and I think that's what makes us better. Um, and so I think, my background, I mean, I started not at Moneta, which is somewhat uncommon. I started at Ameriprise and went to a LPL office in between. But coming to Moneta, it really feels like, I kind of found, use Kyle's word, a tribe that, fits with my outlook as far as financial planning and wealth management. And we really, I mean, we're separated in separate teams at Moneta, but we all share that kind of same philosophy. And I think that's what makes it, Moneta strong and our team strong as well, as having all these different backgrounds as well. So it's been interesting. I've been doing it for 20 years. And so I think just, I've really started to learn. I mean, the stories that you had, 10 years ago are still relevant with folks today. And, being able to tell people, I mean, obviously, I haven't retired yet, but I've helped. I can't tell you how many people I've helped retire. And so I can tell that story where, some of those things you can't, translate, but being able to talk to folks and just see what they're going through and understanding that and asking, a couple more questions about where they're headed and what's in their mind and, what are they scared of. There's a lot of commonality out there. And if you don't take the time, you just talk about, you got your return and you're fine. Like, you miss a lot. And so I think really having those stories and understanding what people are going through helps you give just better advice. And half the time our job is just helping people make good decisions, because the whole psychology of this.
Yeah, and people can relate to stories.
Yes.
Because a lot of, like you said, we have more in common than we realize. And you'll talk to someone, you think your problem is so unique, and then all of a sudden you talk to someone who has a similar problem, and they know someone who has a similar problem, and before you know it, oh wow, it's not as common as I thought it was. So
Oftentimes we will say to folks, especially early on in a relationship, we'll say, look, this is a judgment-free zone. We're kind of like your doctor. We've seen everything. I mean, you're not, no offense. Maybe this is a new one. And it kind of like, as a doc, we have some doctor clients and they'll come in and they'll tell us, hey, you'll never guess, I finally saw this. Most of the time it's disgusting. Don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
But it lends itself to like that commonality. Also too, you get to be a part of some amazing stories. Whether it's a client that is going to get married and they call up and say, hey, we need some money for the ring. One of the most touching ones was we had a client, blue collar guy, worked his entire life, came from nothing. And I remember the meeting, and we have these meetings almost every day of every week. We're going through his financial plan, and he had finally hit this tipping point of where he didn't have to work anymore.
yeah,
Like the plan held if he just tossed the keys on the table when he went home that day. He came back 6 months later and told us that day, that meeting was in his top 5 moments of his entire life.
that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
That is a tremendous feeling.
Yeah.
And one that you wouldn't necessarily associate with because you're doing your thing. But you're making that level of impact.
Yeah, you're doing your job, but you sometimes you don't realize how, again, you're connecting with another person and you're listening to them and you come up with a solution, and you don't realize it at the time, but when they come back to you and say, yeah, this was an incredible moment for me, and you're just sitting there going, well, I'm just doing my job. I understand that. It's a great feeling. It makes you want to come back the next day and go to work and do it again. So that's pretty cool. All right, so you guys are doing this podcast. What made you, when you were talking, who came up with the idea? And I can guess probably who thought of it first, but I'm going to ask you, who said, okay, we have to do a podcast?
Well, yeah, that was, I don't know, have to, but I think it was on Kyle's list of things he wanted to tackle. And, we finally got to the point where, we could. So I said, give it a shot. And so far, it's, like I said, it's been fun.
Yeah, if you recall, the thing was like, hey, we're going to do a podcast. You said that's a great idea, and I said, yeah, you're going to do it with me. And you went, oh, it especially in today's day and age, marketing is changing so fast, and the way that folks consume information. It's weird to say, but I'm not really ever alone, especially when I'm driving somewhere or if I'm going on a run. Which, by the way, if you're running and you're listening to this, please don't trip and fall after you've fallen asleep. But it's just the way that people are consuming information is different. and you got to stay ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're not going to be found.
Now, for you, Kyle, with your background, this is sort of was a transition that was not difficult. And with my background, you and I have similar backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to you, I can hear your training.
Where's my? You don't hear my training?
Dan, wasn't going to say that. But Danton, how much of a challenge has it been for you, and how much I guess also Kyle, how much have you been working with Danton to make sure he feels comfortable in doing this? Because uh, for Kyle and myself, being behind the mic is second nature.
Yeah.
For Danton, this is it can be very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you guys work together to get to where you're at now?
Well, I mean, for me, the thought of getting in front of hundreds of people and doing a presentation, as many advisors, that's how they grow their business. That's how they do.
Sure.
I mean, I'll do it if you need me to, but I know I'm not great at it, and it's not my thing. Now, I would have said podcasting, and maybe it's still not my thing, but you feel like you're just having a conversation with a couple of people. And I think that makes it a lot easier, for at least for me, to relate to, and just, I mean, I'm really just having conversations with people. And I think as we've gotten down the road on the podcast, just realizing that's all you're doing is just having a conversation, and that's made it easy. And Kyle did coach me on that a little bit as well.
Okay,
You know,
Kyle.
This was like pulling on a pair of old shoes when we got the mics out.
Sure.
Just for the simple fact you had done this in I would hate to say like a former life, but it was a former life. And the neat thing about what we did, with being in radio and with being in TV, is you get to work with so many amazing people from different backgrounds.
Sure.
When I was doing motorsports, when I was doing football, as well too, I did some Texas high school football. I will tell you, they are fanatical down there.
Oh yeah.
But you'll have this guy that is like Texas high school football royalty, and he's never been on a microphone before. You get him talking with or without an adult beverage, and he will give you gold. It's just, it's what seat you're sitting in. And I was normally the play-by-play guy, the non-expert, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But just being more of a traffic cop. If you
Sure.
have Pat Summerall and John Madden, Danton's my John Madden. I want to be Pat Summerall, and we'll make magic together. But we each have our lane.
Nice.
And so when you go through things, that's, I think, one of the best things you can do to coach somebody that hasn't done this is just, look, you have an expertise in something, and all you're doing is just sharing that expertise with a larger audience than what you're used to sharing it with.
Awesome. All right. So now that you've got your podcast going, describe your perfect listener. Who are you appealing to?
Yeah, I think in general, I mean, it's certainly the higher level executives. I mean, those would be some of the topics we talk about. And, rather than just talking about, what is a stock option? What is a restricted stock unit? What does that mean to you? I think is the direction we're trying to go. I mean, we worked with folks, I mean, and some Moderna clients back in the COVID timeframe, and the emotional roller coaster they're going through as that stock is just going all over the place. It was, I mean, that was probably one of the craziest times of my life. I mean, I guess for everybody for that matter, but seeing it from that perspective was just different. And so we see that all the time. And now things have calmed down, at least in that space, but there'll be something next, and there always is. So the emotional roller coaster, just trying to make those decisions in that time frame, it's easy to look back and be like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. But if you were going through that, it was something else.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And what people go through always makes the best stories, the paths that they take to where they get to. You talk to some of the partners here at Moneta, what they have done to get to the level that they are at. We've got some C-suites at some very large companies, and the paths that they take, the challenges that they face, the things that they overcome, always to me make far more interesting content than, hey, what is this? What is that? You can find that. If you're really wanting to go find out what an X is, you don't need to listen to a podcast. If you want perspective on how you can get through a challenge or something like that, or like, holy smokes, that's wild. That's what this for. That's the audience this is for, is I would say people that are seeking, again, a shared tribe of folks that have faced similar challenges and got through them and live to tell the tale.
Interesting. While both of you were talking about challenges and things happening in the moment and trying to help people with that, it went back for me. I was on the air the day of 9/11. I was actually on the air, and I got a call from someone, a listener, saying something's going on with the trade towers, Twin Towers. What do you know anything that's happening? And I didn't at the time, and we know what happened that whole day, but it was an amazing experience that I would, I'll never forget. But it's something that we were able to, as you guys do, helping people. It's just a great feeling to be able to help people.
And it was a seminal moment in your career, I think, if you were to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I can tell you everything that happened that day like it was yesterday. That kind of stuff. Okay, let's move on. What can people who listen to this podcast, what can they expect from you going forward? Danton, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think the expectation is we certainly have some guests that can share their own unique perspective as well, and hopefully just share some of those same conversations that we've had over the years. But that way, people have someone that they can relate to and know that they are going through similar situations. Because, I mean, to Kyle's point, especially at that executive level, I mean, a lot of these guys are traveling the country. I mean, nowadays, I mean, there's a lot of online stuff, but there's executives that they're home base is in a whole nother state and they're commuting back and forth and doing a lot of virtual work. And I see the toll it really takes on these people, and it's tough. And so I think, knowing that other people are doing it, it's not just the glamour of, I'm a, CEO and, everything is perfect for me. That's not reality. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there, but that's probably not the norm. And these folks had worked very, very hard to get to where they are. And people don't always understand like the background of how that happened. And so I think sharing those stories will really provide some perspective to folks on, what it takes to get there, but then also how you can get out of there too and retire.
Yeah, I think in the name of the title, you get wit and wisdom. So we can promise that, at least for me, there will be some terrible dad jokes, corny as all get out. I love those. I have 2 little kids, and it's one of the greatest joys of my life to get them to look at me and go, really? It's so funny. So there'll be some wit in there. The wisdom also dispensed, it to me is very key. I work events in a men's leadership event company where we put men of all ages into some extremely stressful situations in a controlled environment. And I was just doing one in Orlando this past weekend, and we had men that had 120-pound sandbags on their shoulders, or we had teams of 4 men carrying a 400-pound tire. One thing I think a lot of folks maybe have a misconception about is executives have a relatively easy row to hoe. But the weight, if you think about it, manifest it kind of like visually, that sandbag or that tire, that's what a lot of these folks are carrying. I mean, there's the weight of responsibility at work, but there's also what I call the weight of wealth. There's a lot of people think if I just make X, all of my problems will be solved. And at least me personally, it doesn't necessarily get easier. It actually gets more complicated because there's more of a feeling and of a responsibility as I can't screw this up. And as you go into these higher levels, especially where these executives are, it's real easy to get tripped up if you're not watching. So that weight of wealth concept, I think, is what you're going to hear a lot of in some of our guests and how they mitigate that personally.
Okay. All right. Well, we're coming to the end. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you want to share with people who are checking this out?
I would say personally, like, come along for the ride, come along for the journey. This is not going to be your typical investing podcast. If you're looking for some of those, I have ones that I list to. I'm more than happy to share you a list. What I hope that you get out of this is honest conversations with people that succeed, but they also struggle, and that they're very real and authentic and transparent about both sides of that coin.
Danton, you have anything to add, or did Kyle sum it up pretty well?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summation of everything.
Okay. How about ways that people can contact you?
Yeah, I mean the website for the podcast, we try to make it as easy to find as possible. Wit, wisdom, and whatmattersmost.com. So that'll bring it to the podcast page, and from there certainly you can find us for on a professional side as well through our podcast. But I think that's probably the easiest way to find us.
There's
Jen?
also too a lot going on with LinkedIn, Facebook, predominantly LinkedIn because we're talking to, folks in the executive level.
Sure.
There's good content that's being pumped out there, especially relevant. And also you might find a barbecue recipe or two.
Okay. I'm going to sign up for that. I want to see the barbecue recipe. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure talking to you and looking forward to your next podcast. And thank you for listening to today's Wit, Wisdom, and What Matters Most podcast. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with friends and family. Until our next Wit, Wisdom, and What Matters Most podcast, I'm RJ Malyk.
Thank you for listening to the Wit, Wisdom, and What Matters Most podcast. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.monetagroup.com to learn more and find additional ways to connect with us in the show notes. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional before making a decision. Investment advisory services offered by Moneta Group Investment Advisors, LLC, an investment advisor registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The information discussed in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and represents the views and opinions of the guest and/or host and does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Moneta. You should consult with an appropriately credentialed professional before making any financial, investment, tax, or legal decision. Past performance is not indicative of future returns. All investments are subject to risk of loss. Please see disclosure for additional information.